Hey everyone, so from this module we are going to start learning some more hooks of React, right? So far we have only used two hooks, one is the use state, one is the use effect, right? The most important React hooks, but there are some more important React hooks as well, which will actually help you to optimize your React application. And those are the hooks that we are going to see in this particular module, right? So the first hook that we are going to see today is the use callback hook. Right. So first we'll discuss the challenges that we have, and then we'll see how you can use the use callback hook to optimize those particular problems that you will be facing. Right. So let's get started. So over here what I have done is, first let me just show you the example that I'm going to take. So what you can see is I have these components created over here, and let's first go to our app.jsx. So in my app.jsx, a very basic structure, right? I'm just rendering out a parent component that I have created. So let's check out the parent component. So over here you see my whole parent component, and inside this parent component I'm getting all of my components one by one. So my first component is the title component. So over here you can see I have just created a very basic title component which just says use callback hook, right? So over here if I move, you can say this is my heading, use callback hook. This is basically my title component. That's it, right? And then I have these components in my parent component as well, that is the count component and a button component. So what I will be doing with these two components is that, let's suppose that I have this particular button with me and I have this particular count component with me. So this count component will just take a text value and will just take a age value, right? First is for age. So that's why I have created a state for age, right? So this will be by default set to 25. So as you can see, the age is by default set to 25 as we are passing this in our count, right? So this count is taking up the age and printing it over here, right? And with that we can pass a text as well. So for this count I'm passing a text age, right? So that's why you can see over here age 25, just passing some basic props, right? And we have an increment age button, right? This increment age button has a handle click prop which basically takes this function, that is increment age. So over here if I go to the button, so this will just take that increment age. Whenever I increment that, it will just raise the count by 1 for the age and my age will be updated. That's what it will do. And with that, whatever text you pass inside that. So over here for this button I have passed increment age, right? So this will be taken as the children. So this will be taken as the basically the text of the button, right? So over here you can see this is taken as a children and this gets entered as the text of the button, right? Very simple, right? So over here if I increment the age, that function invokes and you can increment the age. Similar thing I have followed with my salary. We can reuse our components in React, right? So for that what I have done is I have again said that okay, let's take count and button again, but this time we'll pass the salary value and we'll pass a different function, that is increment salary. So this is increment salary and this is increment age, and for both of them we have created this state. So whenever I go over here and if I click on this increment salary, my salary will be increased by 1000, right? Like that. So this is basically the example that we have right now, right? Now you must be saying that okay, everything is working fine. What is the problem, right? What is the problem? Everything is working fine, buttons are working fine, props are getting passed, we see the title, everything sorted. But let's figure out this problem. Okay, so what I will do first is I'll just go over here, and I think already I have removed the strict mode. Yes, I have removed the strict mode. So what happens when you use the strict mode is it gives you 2 times the output, right? But what I want you to show is over here, if you see, with all the components I have this console log as well, right? I have this console log statement as well. So whenever that component will render, this console log will be there, so we can know that okay, that this time this component is rendering, right? So that's why I've just entered these console log statements. So if you see for count also we have the rendering console log, for parent, for title also we have the rendering title, for buttons we have the rendering button, right? So that's why you can know that whenever the logs will come up in the console, we'll know these components are getting rendered. Great. So let's basically get to inspect, right? And I'll just keep my console at the left, yeah, like that. And let's go to this console and let's take this example over here. Okay, so let me just refresh. So as soon as I refresh, everything will re-render. Great. So as soon as everything gets re-rendered, you see rendering title, great, title is getting rendered. You see rendering age, so yes, this age component is getting re-rendered, yes. Rendering button increment age, great. So this increment button is getting rendered, and your salary component and your salary button. So everything is getting rendered one by one. This is for the first time, right? But now let's focus on this thing. So I'll clear the console for now, right? So let's clear the console and let's click on this increment age, right? Let's click on this increment age. We just want to increment the age. Let's click on this. As soon as I click on this, the age increases. The age increases. The age things are getting re-rendered. Perfectly fine. But if you see, do we have anything to do with title right now? No. Do we have anything to do with this salary and increment salary right now? No. Then why are these things getting re-rendered? We just want to press the increment age button and we just want to, yes. So we just want to press this increment age button, click on this, and we just need to increase the age. That's the whole point. But why these components are also getting re-rendered, right? And now this is a small example, but now let's suppose you're working on a big project and you have a lot of components. And every time you click on one component, every component that is unrelated to the component that you are working with also gets re-rendered. That will create a performance issue, right? That will make your apps slow down. That will not be a good thing to do for your React application. So how can you manage this, right? So basically, the first thing that you can do over here is use something known as react.memo, right? Now I'm not saying react.memo is the use memo hook, right? So many people are confused out there that okay, react.memo is use memo only, but no, use memo is a separate hook. React.memo is a property of React, right? And what is this memo? What does this memo stands for? It stands for memoization, right? And what is memoization? Memoization is basically that particular property of mathematics or computing, you can say, where we say that whenever a value has been generated, just store this, just store that somewhere and just get the value out of that only, right? Do not again calculate, do not try to calculate it again and again. If something has been calculated, store it and we can use the result later, right? But if that result has changed, then we have to do some calculation. That's memoization. If you have done basic data structures, you must be knowing that. Or if you do not, I'll strongly recommend you to read about memoization. But over here, we can use this property, right? So inside all of my components, I can go to my count and I can just add something known as react.memo over here, and I can render this count inside my memo like that. Similarly, I can go to my title and I can just say react.memo and I can render out my title, right? And now you will see the difference what will happen. So button is rendered, okay, no, button is not, so I'll just say react.memo for my button as well. Not react, right? So react.memo button, react.memo count, react.memo title. So everything has been memoized. Okay. So now let's check that if something is changing over here or not. I'll just refresh. And over here, this is the first time. This is the first time. So first time everything will load. But now let me clear this. And now let's see if I click on this increment age, what components gets re-rendered. Okay. So I click on increment age. You see, as soon as I click on this increment age, now my title is not re-rendering and my salary component is not getting re-rendered, right? So basically these two things are memoized, right? These two things are not getting re-rendered. They are being used as it is, right? They are being used as it is. They are not getting re-rendered because nothing has changed with them, right? They are just as it is, right? But if I do not use react.memo, then you will see that everything will get re-rendered again. Right? So we have optimized this a little, right? We have optimized this a little. There is still some problem that exists. And what is that problem? That problem over here is that we are clicking on the button that should increment our age. Great. So rendering age should be re-rendered because we have updated something over there. We have clicked on this button. So this button is getting re-rendered. Perfectly fine. But why is this increment salary button is getting re-rendered? That is the question. Why is this increment salary button is getting re-rendered? This should not get re-rendered, right? Because we have memoized everything. But this will. Why? Because if you see, we are using the same component over here. If I go to my parent, we are using the same component over here. The button, right? We are just passing the increment salary and increment age. So there are two different functions. There are two different functions that are being passed for the same component, right? So although these two components are pretty much similar, are exactly similar, but these two particular functions are not equal to each other, right? They are different. If you see, one is setting the age, one is setting the salary, and they are behaving differently as well, right? So that's why this particular button will say that I'm receiving these two functions, so I have to re-render both of them. I have to re-render both the buttons. So that's why when I click on one button, both of the button gets re-rendered, right? So now, how to solve this? How to solve for this? So basically over here, we can use a special kind of hook that is known as useCallback, right? useCallback. And how to use this useCallback? How to use this useCallback? You can just go over here and you can wrap your function around useCallback just like this, right? So useCallback. The first thing that the useCallback will take is this callback function, right? Is this callback function. So now your set age function, whatever definition you have written, is actually a callback function that the useCallback take. And over here you can specify. That when the age property will change, only then we have to call this function. Only then we have to use this. And similarly, we can go over here and we can say when the salary function or when the salary prop, basically the value, when the salary value will change, you just have to call it over there, right? Like that. So basically, this is again your dependency array. This is again called the dependency array only. You have used this with the use effect hook, right? So the same dependency array is over here. So now we are making this increment age function dependent on the age value. That now this button will also know that whenever this particular function is called, I have to only check for age. I do not have to check for anything else, right? And similarly, the salary will also know, the salary function will also know that, okay, whenever there is an increment button called, I just have to check for salary, that if there is a change in the salary, then only I will re-render it, right? So this is the thing that we have done. Now, let's check this out. So if I refresh everything, first time, everything will get rendered. Now, let's clear it up. So if I just click on increment age, now you see the salary part is gone. We only see what we expect, the age and increment age. If I click on salary, you only see salary and increment salary, right? Nothing else, no title and no other component, right? So if I click on age, only age one is getting rendered. If I click on salary, only salary one is getting rendered, right? The value of the salary and basically the button, right? So this is how you can use the use callback hook to optimize your components, right? So whenever you have definitions like this, right, whenever you're reusing components with different functions, right, so these functions are not same. So what you can do is you can just make a use callback hook over here and you can just pass a dependency. Like when this value change, only then call this function and call this only. You do not need to call anything else, right? You do not need to render out anything else as well. Right? So this is how you can actually completely optimize these kind of problems, right? So first we learned about React.memo, that you can memoize stuff that you want, but there are these cases where the functions will not know when to run, right? So now you can just do a use callback and you can pass down your dependency, and based on these dependencies only, now your functions will start getting rendered, your components will get rendered, right? So this is how you can use the use callback hook. Thank you for watching this video. Yes, just practice this out once, right? Because these are generally asked in the interviews sometimes. So you must be thorough with these kind of hooks, right? So this was just callback, and in the next lecture, we'll talk about another hook.